We can start. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. People are still coming in. Wonderful. We'll start. Thank you for coming today. My name is Alan Grundy. I'm the Global Cash and Voucher Programming Lead for CRS, Catholic Relief Services. I'm going to give you a little context of what we're talking about today, and then I'll do an introduction. So I've been working for about 20 years in emergency response and development programming, and primarily in trying to figure out how to give money to people. So providing financial assistance or cash. That's the way we like cash. We do this little sign with the boom, boom, boom. If everybody wants to do that, it's also always fun to see. So yeah, we work to trying to figure out how to provide financial assistance in emergency and development situations. Now, the issue that we primarily focus on when we're trying to provide assistance is tackling this issue of financial inclusion. And when we say financial inclusion, it's the term financial inclusion is like very technical, so I'm going to simplify it. It's getting people to access banking services or financial services. Well, not just banking, but pretty much any type of financial service, accessing services. And this is not a new topic. We've been talking about this for a very long time. Last time I talked about this was in a panel discussion in 2013. Clearly it didn't go well because this has been many years, and this is the next panel I've been, so it didn't do well. But and back then in 2013, we were talking about blockchain and financial inclusion. So again, financial inclusion is not a new topic, yeah, that's what we've been doing. But the question is, why are we talking about it today? And the reason is because there's been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of changes, not only in the development sector, as we all know, there's been significant changes in the development sector. There's also been some changes in the financial sector. And with changes, there's always opportunities. There's also been new technologies and new approaches to provide financial services. So that's why we're talking about it. And this is the ICT4D conference, so we're talking about technology. And the goal of this conversation is to figure out what new approaches and what new services are available to the most vulnerable, how to provide those services and how to get the most vulnerable to benefit from these new approaches to get these financial services and be financially included. So that's what we're talking about today. And now I'm going to do an introduction. So enough talking about me and what I've been doing. We're going to talk about my fellow colleagues here. So to start off, we have Ida Gacheri. I should have checked how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Ida Gacheri Micheni? Yeah? All right. She's a product manager for technology for development at Safaricom. So please, applause, welcome applause. Great, thanks. Then we have Jessie Woltz. I also should have checked the pronunciation, so sorry about that. She's the head of programs for QualiPay. Thank you. And then we have Matthew Kroll. Matthew Kroll is the Senior Vice President of Strategy, Legal, and Public Affairs at Relevate. Thank you. So thank you for coming, guys. Appreciate it. And let's hear a little bit about you. So, and your company and the products that you offer. So if you could help me, please, I would appreciate if you could give me a brief overview of what the main product of your company and what you provide in terms of financial services to people. So Ida, if we could start with you.
Good morning, not afternoon, yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us on this table to speak about, first mile to last mile financial inclusion for the vulnerables. Safaricom's vision is to transform lives. So we are driven by the vision of transforming lives, and our purpose and our mission is to be Africa's purpose-led technology company. So we are anchored in terms of what we do based on that. And if you look at in terms of, for the benefit of this conversation, financial inclusion is anchored on our revolutionary product, M-Pesa. I'm sure you must have read about M-Pesa. M-Pesa is, it's more of a digital infrastructure for financial inclusion. Because it has evolved from just basic of transferring money from one person to another to just going more beyond and enabling businesses to operate, being a payment layer for businesses to transact, transforming the lives of women, girls, and also even being banking, providing a banking for the unbanked in the industry. So I would be keen to speak on that. And also we are very keen on connectivity, because without connectivity, then there is no financial inclusion. So in connectivity also, we are looking more in terms of how do we enable more people cutting across the different counties in Kenya and beyond, and also in Africa, just to be able to connect to these financial services that we have from M-Pesa perspective, and also from services like, Lipa Mdogo Mdogo, which is like small by small, to ensure that there is also smartphone penetration within Kenya. Beyond this, we are also anchored by our foundations. That is, we have two foundations, that is the M-Pesa and Safaricom foundations. And I know we work a lot with the humanitarian and development partners just to be able to continue with our purpose of transforming lives, working with projects around health, education, WASH. So we do a lot, economic empowerment. So we are more in terms of also working with the different partners in that from a philanthropic arm as well, to continue transforming lives. So ideally, from where we sit in technology for development, as Safaricom PLC, we look at more in terms of how do we establish shared value partnerships with like-minded partners to co-create sustainable products. So we are anchored more on sustainability and sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Ida. Also, just to note, Safaricom has more than 60 million users, mobile money specifically, and covers about 95% of the market, right, in Kenya. It was a pioneer in mobile money. So thank you for that. It's been amazing to track and see its growth. Jessie, please.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hope you've had enough coffee and tea. So we built Koala Pay to move humanitarian aid funding more quickly, more transparently, and more reliably to the most hard to reach places and often the most conflict affected countries. And we have built a platform that makes it easier for the aid sector to use. If any of you know about blockchain, any eye rolls out there, you might know that it is pretty hard to use. But it has some very compelling solutions for reaching the most vulnerable people. It is an alternative global payment rail to the international banking system. And from our perspective, the international banking system on which the aid sector largely relies is very slow, expensive, and unreliable when it comes to moving the humanitarian aid funding. Essentially, it wasn't really built for humanitarian aid funding because that funding is largely destined for the most vulnerable people in the most operationally complex places in the world. So yeah, I'll talk more, I think, later about some of those components of blockchain that make it really interesting for reaching the most vulnerable, but that's just a bit about Koala Pay.
Thanks, Jessie. That's wonderful. Not just to say, like I mentioned already, I was at a blockchain conference in 2013, and it was crazy to hear about this. I've been tracking this topic for a long time, and it's great to see it moving into the humanitarian sector and supporting the moving of money. So it's wonderful to see. Thanks, Jessie. Matthew, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you to Alan and CRS for inviting us. We're actually, Relevate is a partner with CRS. We entered into an agreement last year to do prepaid debit cards for humanitarian aid and emergency relief around the world. Relevate was built about 6 years ago. Two co-founders had come from the financial services industry and had kind of realized that there was a whole sector of the United States population that was essentially neglected when it came to financial services. So they built Relevate to help low-income, middle-income Americans access financial services products without paying exorbitant fees. And when we first started our company, we were focused on American workers, low-income and low-wage workers, accessing funds. This population in the United States, when we originally started, 80% of them, and they're still there today, 80% of them live paycheck to paycheck. So if you're getting a paycheck on the first Friday of the month and you don't get one for another 2 weeks or another month, you're struggling when you get to the end of that pay period. And Relevate was built on a product called Earned Wage Access. We have a product called Pay Any Day. So our technology ingest how much you've worked and how much you get paid. And that's when we originally exposed, before your pay period, money that you've already earned, you just hadn't gotten paid for it. And we advanced that money to you. And then on payday, we recouped our funds. And we did it at a low cost model. There's a lot of players in the market. There's been a lot of bad press about it because of some of the fees that other companies charge. Relevate doesn't charge for our product, so workers can access those funds without paying any fee. And we do it through a prepaid debit card. And I've realized talking today that not everyone knows what a prepaid debit card is. So prepaid debit card is essentially a card product. I have one right here. It's this. It's got a MasterCard logo on it, or it may have a Visa logo on it. And funds are put on here. That's what Relevate does. We offer a prepaid debit card. And we got into the disbursement business a couple of years ago when I was working for the state of Georgia. I've been in the public sector business for 20 years. I've worked in numerous county and state governments. And I ran a $1 billion disbursement program for the state of Georgia to issue $350 cash payments on virtual debit cards. So a virtual debit card is not a physical debit card like this, but it's one that you can tokenize into your phone. So in the United States, you use Apple Pay or Google Pay. You could take and tokenize it and just put the information on your phone and use it, tap and pay wherever MasterCard or Visa is accepted. So we did a $1 billion disbursement, and these are all low-income individuals. So they were on federal benefits. They're cash assistance, Medicaid, which is healthcare benefits, or food stamps, which is SNAP. And all those individuals got the $350 payment. And the biggest rub was that these individuals weren't going to know how to use a virtual debit card. And 4 years ago in Georgia, we pushed out 1.8 million virtual cards to this population. And we taught them. We put out FAQs, we put out training videos. We still do that today with different segments where we now do virtual debit cards to this population to educate them, because they are not educated in the financial services industry a lot because they're neglected. They know how to cash a check at a check casher. They know how to get a payday loan. They know how to maybe borrow money from a friend or a family member, but now they know how to tokenize a card. And this population accepted this kind of new technology. And that was 4 years ago. And now, Jesse and I were talking earlier, it's now become more prevalent in the United States to use a prepaid debit card. And Relevate does this throughout the country with different programs, whether it's, we do it with Arizona, a state in the United States, Arizona. I got to remember, we're on the other side of the world here, and not everybody knows what Arizona is. State of Mississippi, which is another state in the United States that they push out some payments, and we all do it through virtual cards. But we also do physical cards. So our partnership with CRS was started to allow CRS to provision cards ahead of a need, whether it was an emergency relief event where you have a natural disaster or political unrest in an urban type area where you can use prepaid cards, where you can tap and pay. You have POS systems that accept funds, that they can provision these cards, get them out, and we can fund them. And we have technology. All of our software, all of our technology and our cards are built off software that you can fund the cards instantly. So you could have field representatives handing out cards at a disaster site and funding the cards right then and there. And the cards are able to be activated and used right at that point, instead of waiting for the money to be passed, 2 weeks throughout the world and getting cash into people's hands. They actually have a physical card. We can even do that with virtual cards too, to where we're just texting people the information to access the system and get the information to tokenize the card and put it on. So Relevate been doing that. We're excited about our partnership with CRS. And it's been a crazy year, but it's been fun. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks, Matthew. And for CRS, we've been working with prepaid cards for a while. Our first intervention with prepaid cards was in Jordan, and then we moved into Greece and other locations, and we've done it at scale. And we're really excited to be able to use this opportunity with Relevate. So hopefully, hopefully, but not hopefully, because it's all dependent on emergency response. So we actually don't want that, but it's great to have that as a backup support structure for us. So let's go into the questions. Wonderful. All right. So the first is to talk about a little bit about limitations of your products. So what are some of the limitations for the use of your product? And with all these new tech opportunities, like some that we've talked in this conference, how are you looking to adapt and improve your product service? Any new strategies that we can think about or hear, and be first ones on the to hear about them that you might want to share with our colleagues here. Can we start off? Jesse, you have the microphone?
Yeah,
So over to
I'll
you.
go. Okay. You've inspired some thoughts. So I think one of the biggest barriers for primarily our clients are funders. So people who want to move aid funding with an origin of the US or Europe into across different borders. And one of the biggest barriers is just dispelling the myths around blockchain, in particular digital currency. We even sometimes shy away from the word cryptocurrency because it brings out the scaries for people. But we only work with stablecoins, and I'll share more about that later. But it's really initially kind of dispelling the myths around that, all cryptocurrency is speculative and volatile. There are alternatives, and they are highly regulated in the US and in particular in Europe. We have found actually that the payees, so the people who are actually on the receiving end, have less hesitations with receiving stable coins. It's usually the funders, and largely I think because of their own internal barriers and who ultimately is funding them that have to be navigated. And similarly, just that internal change that is required inside these funding institutions to embrace a very new technology when, for the last 20 years, that institution has finally gotten used to their ERP system or their TMS, and they're like, we're not making any more changes. Like, no, thank you. And so they often are willing to cope with the banking system's failures in these places, like how expensive it is, like how slow it is, because it's the default. So what we do at QualiPay is we go on that journey with those institutions to sort of say, like, here's how it works. We talk to the treasury teams, we reassure, we do a lot of kind of internal change management with the champions inside that organization that really want to embrace this technology. And one of the upcoming efforts we're undertaking to overcome this barrier, again, at the funding level, is an integration with ERP systems. So, banking systems.
ERP systems.
Oh, yes. ERP, gosh, enterprise resource planning. There we go. Thank you. It's essentially an oversight of the entire organization and all of the fund flows and, incoming payments, bills that are due, invoices that are outstanding, and is really that kind of machinery behind an institution that moves money in the aid sector and other businesses as well. And the banking rails, the legacy banking rails, connect into those systems pretty well, right? Because they've had time to work that connection. Blockchain and stablecoins have not, right? It's a new technology. So what we're going to do at QualiPay is try to bridge that gap. And we're going to see if we can create an ERP integration so that institutions feel more at ease with, okay, now this is no longer an alternative payment system I'm managing. It is alongside banking system, and I can use all these tools in different places.
But you also you help organizations like ours, like potentially ours, to cross borders, right? To transactions. But you also provide you link up with other financial services in that country to then get it to the last mile, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So I think a common and very obvious question is, if you pay someone in stable coins in Sudan, and I'll probably use that example a lot because it's where we send our clients send the most money, is what does someone in Sudan do with USDC, right? And that has to be, for now, converted into the local currency in order to be used, right? So what we do is map a network of financial service providers who maybe the aid sector is already using, right? They've been mapped before, but that they're willing to take on or work with a new technology and to receive USDC and do that Forex. That
USDC is a type of cryptocurrency.
It's a type of
stablecoin
stablecoin.
specifically.
Yes, yes, pegged to the dollar. And I'll talk more about that and kind of if we talk about the specifics of blockchain and why it's really interesting for the aid sector. But what we have found is those financial service providers are actually really keen to receive stablecoins because it moves across borders really fast. And if they have cross-border businesses, this is actually hugely convenient for them, right? They're also no longer subject to delays of getting their money from Sudan into Kenya to import goods. And so we do, either they're already in that business, they already have digital wallets. And actually what you find in places like Myanmar and Sudan is people have been using cryptocurrency for a while because the financial sector has not been serving them, right? They've been excluded. So they've had to come up with alternative means to move money. And so we work with those FSPs if needed to build capacity. Also on the receiving end, whether it's, youth groups or emergency rooms or women's groups or, national partners to help them understand blockchain as well. So we do a lot of capacity building on the receiving end.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jesse. Well, while we're talking about FSPs, let's move on to Safaricom and M-Pesa. It'd be great to have to hear some of your limitations. And if you want to talk about potentially linking up with QualiPay, you can also speak to that. But I'm just joking. But if you want to talk a little bit about tech opportunities and how you're looking to adopt, just on my little anecdote, I was here about 4 months ago speaking with a friend. We went and used M-Pesa, and my buddy was a little frustrated. Oh, it's so difficult to code in. And then I saw him now on this visit. Thank you for bringing me here, by the way. And he was speaking to like, oh, M-Pesa has already adapted and has improved that engagement already with the vendor and being able to code in. So I'm really looking forward to hear from you.
All right. Thank you so much. So if you're looking in terms of the barriers, there is the component of digital divide, because if you're looking at the market you're serving is the most vulnerable. And if you're looking at Kenya, for example, the most vulnerable, you find them in the Lulo communities, in the refugee camps, in some areas where there is sometimes challenges with connectivity. However, what we've done from a Safaricom perspective, we keep on investing very heavily on infrastructure, connectivity infrastructure, to ensure that, they can first, even with the basics, they can be able to make calls and complete calls. And that means also when they're able to make calls and complete calls, then when you send disbursements, because most of the humanitarian organizations, what we've done, we've enabled them to use M-Pesa as a platform for cash disbursements to the beneficiaries. So in that case, after sorting out that, then you're able to disperse money, and they're able to connect, have that connectivity and be able to do their transaction. If you look at also the M-Pesa system, one of the key elements is also we have a huge distribution network. So we have huge distribution network from an M-Pesa agent, M-Pesa merchants, all the way across the country, even to the deepest rural communities. And what that means is that if, for example, we are able to enable you from you find scenarios, for example, if I talk about refugees, for example, you find the legislation that we have, which is also another barrier. The legislation in Kenya does not allow us to be able to register refugees using manifests, but you can be able to register them using their refugee ID. Manifest is the document they are given once they get into the country after some verification they are given by UNHCR and Department of Refugee Services. However, when that process is completed, they are given a refugee ID. So right now, what is recognized is the refugee ID, which has been a milestone that we achieved, was achieved last year, May. And now we can be able to register refugees for SIM card and for M-Pesa.
So you've adapted your KYC, your know your customer information,
yes,
to allow for refugees.
Yes,
That's amazing.
yes. So now if you're looking at such kind of a vulnerable community or community of refugees, we've already overcome that barrier of registration for refugees. And already, we've already, before even we started registration, because we also have to enable the humanitarian and development partners operating within the camps, we have already established a distribution network. So from an M-Pesa agent, from a M-Pesa merchant perspective, and they can be able to do that. Then there is this gap of now, the ones that we can't register, which are manifest. So we've been able to craft different models. For example, I'll give an example of World Food Program model, whereby we have a partnership and we have a product called Bamba Chakula. Bamba Chakula, Chakula is food so it's a Kiswahili name. So Chakula is food. It's more like a token for food. That's what it means.
It's a voucher component, but
so it's a voucher component. Yeah. So we find in such kind of scenarios, we enable the humanitarian organizations to just be able to register using the organization and be able to now deliver. We're able to deliver like vouchers. We have a platform within M-Pesa, in evolution of M-Pesa, that can be able to deliver vouchers to these recipients. And now they can be able to pick the vouchers and redeem the same vouchers within the merchants that are nearer to them within the camp. So from a regulatory barrier, I think we are slowly overcoming it through advocacy and also innovating, also co-creating with partners in terms of solutions that can work. Again, also if you're looking in terms of for this solution to work, for you to be able to do business with M-Pesa, for you to be able to transact on M-Pesa, you also need, to some extent, to be able to enjoy moving from just a USSD, that is the dialing the short code, just to be able to access the service. We've now moved to digital platforms whereby we have application that you can also be able to get all the the M-Pesa services in one.
It
And-
requires a smartphone though, right?
Yes. So, and now that's where I was going with now a barrier. If you're looking at our contest in Kenya, there is that barrier of smartphone penetration. Yeah, so you find the target market we're talking about here, the vulnerables in the populations, the smartphone penetration is really not as we would have wished it to be. So for our side, what we've done is that we've created a product called Lipa Mdogo Mdogo, is paying slowly. Let me try to translate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so so and this product, what it does, it enables you to get a smartphone of your desired. We partnered with some organizations, so you can be able to get a smartphone as a user, and then you can be able to pay using M-Pesa, the installments, and then you're
Like
retaining the
deducting
smartphone.
from
Yes. So you're able to have a smartphone that you can be able to utilize. So we've also seen a couple of people using that model to just be able to get to the smartphones if they're not able to buy one-off. Another key component that I would want to mention is on the financial literacy. If you look at the population we are focusing on, we have to continuously do financial literacy in terms of this is how you use M-Pesa. And because there's another challenge of cyber attacks, because you'll find like people will come in with fraud issues, just trying to get, when you are transacting in M-Pesa, one key authenticator is your PIN. So if you share a PIN with someone else, then that means that person can be able to have your secret, and similarly to the bank, and you can be able to, to withdraw your money or to misuse your money. So, and also again, in terms of how you're sending the money, we are continuously doing those financial literacy for the people to be able to use the M-Pesa. Now that is on the consumer side. Now, when you're looking at the beneficiary side, if you're looking now on the business side, allow me to classify the development partners and humanitarian organizations from a business side angle. So if you're looking at it, there is also components on data privacy. Because most of the time you'll find like you want to use the platforms, the M-Pesa platform, to do a cash disbursement. And again, you also want to influence, the details of who did I send the money to? Can I get that report? But we are also governed by data protection, so we cannot be able to do that. So we're also trying to see what are the give and takes when we are working with the development partners and humanitarian organizations to be able to create that scalable platform for them to do both digital and cash disbursements, and also to be able to help them in the cases of, like, let's say, for example, anticipatory action, for example. Kenya has 2 cycles, flood or drought. Yeah. So, on a light note, yeah. So we find it very common here. So when it comes to like flood interventions, we're also trying to see and working with some organizations using our vouchering platform also, we've been able to enable an example of UNICEF just to be able to deliver their kits that fit. Because what that means is that they are able to, say this is the products we are going to deliver, maybe a blanket, a package of what they are going to give to the families that have been affected. And then for us, what we've done is that we give this, they work with the different merchants within our ecosystem. And then from these merchants, then they're able to get like a voucher, the beneficiaries are able to get a voucher. And then this voucher, they can be able to, a digital voucher, they can be able to redeem to these merchants and pick. So it really creates efficiency from just moving with lollies to take, stuff to them for the interventions, and also creates a cost reduction, efficiency, and the likes. Yes, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. That's so great. And she one of the limitations she touched on was the smartphones. And when I was thinking, when you were Matthew, when you were explaining some of the services that you offer with your prepaid cards, you touched on the tokenized. It would be great to hear about that. But please, over to you. Yeah, the microphone's right there.
Perfect. So going back to the limitation question, there's two real limitations that I think of. First off is the compliance regulation, right? So we're a US based company. We work with US based banks, and there's a big compliance aspect of it, whether it's the know your customer, know your business side of the Bank Secrecy Act or Anti-Money Laundering Act or the OFAC list. And that's really where, we are always focused on the compliance side, is making sure that we're following those rules and regulations and that we're in that. So we have to overcome that. And a prepaid card is a little bit different in that the fact that the money is in the humanitarian space, it's one source of funds. So the funds usually coming from, in our agreement, it's coming from CRS. CRS is funding these cards. So we know where the funds are coming from, and that's very good. The other limitation is the use of the card, right? So where you look at M-Pesa has to, is working with vendors. See, we're working with a MasterCard network, which has universal acceptance. I mean, you can go anywhere. I mean, I use a MasterCard downstairs at the coffee shop. I just tap and pay. So that network is built out, but it's not built out in a rural part of the country, or it's got to be more, there's got to be more population where MasterCard can be used. And that is, I mean, MasterCard's available and Visa's available, and you could be used at millions and millions of locations around the world. And you can also use it at ATM. And that's the other thing, you can get cash. Instead of having to go to a bank, you can go to an ATM and get cash back. I think the limitation, when you tie both of those two things together and you look at the compliance side of things and you look at the network, it's depending what you're trying to do. What are you trying to get this card to do? Are you just trying to get aid and provide money to people to buy things at merchants? That's great. The compliance on that is a little bit lower. But when you start wanting to do reloadable cards, the bank is like, okay, is the funds still coming from the same source? Okay, that's still good, but you can't take and say, I'm going to put, any kind of pay that I may have earned or money I've gotten from another friend or a loan. I can't put it on the card because it's a prepaid card. The source of funds is one source of funds. Now, if we did a full KYC product, you could do that. You can add sources of funds. So what do you want the card to do? That's kind of our first question. What do you want the card to do? Do you want cash access, or you just is it just spend? And that's where the compliance and the network comes together. So we really focus on those two things, that the limitation, what does this product need to do? And how do we fit it within the compliance and regulation framework? And then we look at our partner, CRS is the expert on where this card's going to be able to be used more than I know sitting in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know what the network looks like or the infrastructure looks like, especially after maybe a natural disaster. Is there, is cell technology available? Is the POS systems available? Am I going to come to the eastern part of Africa and use prepaid debit cards? No, because no one's using them. They're all using mobile money. So it's not an area that we're ever going to come to. But Latin America, Europe, Asia, where you can see prepaid cards being used more, that's where our focus would be around the world in those types of organizations.
That's great. I mean, I wouldn't downplay the use of prepaid cards here. The HSMP program, I believe, uses cards in the north. At least I've seen it several years ago in Turkana. But I mean, I agree with you. It's I think we even talked a little bit about it. Does it make sense to pay with a card, or like the mobile money's right there? It's always a conversation. But I'm a big prepaid card. I mean, I'm a big debit card user, so I'm a big fan of the card use. I haven't used mobile money as much. We have a couple of development actors, I believe. Can we get a woo woo? Hey, development actors in the room? Yeah, there we go. No woo woo, but all right, no problem.
How about a little?
Little cash would be great too. But and you've already touched on with some of the work that CRS does, but it would be good to hear from the rest of you if you want to. Because we have these development actors and emergency, humanitarian actors here in the room, what can we do to expand the access to the the last mile, to the most vulnerable, or the participants of our programs? How can we expand that access and get them to use your product more? I don't know if you want to speak.
Sure. The product that we have, there's no limitation once you give it to the card holder. We call the person that gets the card, the beneficiary is going to be the card holder. So they don't have to go to a bank and do any other kind of transfer. It's the team in the field that issues them the card and hands them the card. At that point, the card, once it's activated, it's able to be used. There's no anything else they need to do. They don't have to go to a bank to pull money off the card. You go to ATM if they want to use it, but they can go to any kind of merchant that accepts that card and use that card for whatever they need as a result of that natural disaster or humanitarian event. So I think from our perspective is that there's low friction at the end user. I think there's other things, and one limitation that we do, we operate in USD. So if I have to go to Bolivia and I have to get our card to be used in Bolivia, I could do cross-border, but we understand what cross-border is taking. It takes weeks to do that. We have to set up an issuing bank in that country. Relevate works and operates in USD. So what's on the card for the card holder is USD.
And USD is US dollar.
US dollars. So when the transaction is done, it's done in US dollars. And the conversion that Jesse was talking about by the financial services, it's just done by MasterCard or Visa. They do the conversion. The cardholder doesn't even realize what the conversion is. It's all done by our processor and by working with MasterCard. And that's how it is. It's just our bank talks to our processors, talks to MasterCard, talks to the merchant, and the merchant's processor and then the merchant, and it's all done seamlessly in microseconds and nobody realizes it's done. And then we feed all that information. That's the other thing about our technology. Our software, we have a prepaid card, but behind a prepaid card is this unbelievable software system that gives us all this data, gives us all this information, and we feed that into CRS's ERP system. So they could see those transactions in real time. If they want to see where this, what merchants are getting these cards used, we can feed that right into the system and they can look at it and move that and say, okay, this is where we're seeing, that type of spend. So I think from our product, what would help, on the, how do you get more adoption of a product is like, there's no friction for the card holder. You have to be able to manage it from a humanitarian organization side, and we can manage it for you too. UNICEF uses our product. UNICEF is one of our clients. They use our product to do operations around the world. And it's all run by 3 people in United Nations headquarters in New York City, and they move money on our cards and off our cards every day. And that's one of our great use cases in how they use USD around the world. So the UNICEF office in Kenya is using our cards, but any of their operational costs and their expenses that they're using it in USD, and then the conversion is done for them. So we don't have to set up a cross-border partner in Kenya for UNICEF. We don't have to use a cross-border partner in Bolivia or in Chile or in Romania. You take our card, you go to a MasterCard merchant, and you use the card, and it's all done. And the cross-border part of it is taken out of the equation. So there's a trade-off. You don't have to find a bank and do all the setup and do the currency exchange with the bank's going to do their currency exchange and their rate, and they're going to take their cut. We just do foreign transaction fees, and that's how it's paid for. So there's a little, it's a trade-off, but the speed, you get the speed of a prepaid card in US dollars rather than trying to get it in cross-border local currency. And at the end of the day, does the beneficiary really care if it's USD or if it's Kenyan shillings? I don't think they really care. They just want the relief.
And thank you, because you just touched on something that I wanted to talk about. So you just kind of threw the ball up, and I'm gonna knock it out. No, I love it. You talk about FSB fees. You said fees, transactions. So I'm gonna jump into that one because right away, and I like the fact that you already gave the microphone to Jesse, because Jesse, this is a question for you. Yesterday, one of our colleagues, Care from Care, talked about efficiency and transactions and cost efficiency of cash transfers. And I would really like to hear from QualiPay is like, what type of strategies is QualiPay taking on to decrease the cost of moving money?
Yeah. So it really depends on which country you're trying to move funds into. But would we, in places like some of the most challenging places like Sudan, Myanmar, where we have a lot of clients sending funds, we sort of say, look at where the funds originate, right? So whether that's the US or Europe or the Middle East, and map that entire flow out to the endpoint of that transaction and look at all the different fees that come with that. So fees that the correspondent banks are taking out, FX loss along the way because that currency conversion is happening at a bank, or a lot of clients will say, well, we use actually FSPs to move money into this country, and they give us a good rate. But actually, when you look at the rate that those FSPs are offering compared to the real value market rate, there's 35% of value that's being lost, right? And so it's actually a lot of times people don't know all the fees that are being taken along the way. And then, if you look at also like the administrative burden of moving that money to so many across so many borders. So we do that comparison and with our fees in a given context. And what we always transparently say up front is like, let's start with a small pilot, and then we always benchmark how much you would normally pay, how long it would normally take compared to the speed and the cost of using KoalaPay. And if you aren't gaining in value or value delivered to recipients on the ground, and if you aren't gaining in speed, we might not be the right tool for this place and for this population, right? And we're not here to shove technology down anyone's throat. We are not for every single aid flow, but in some places and in some aid flows, it makes a lot of sense, especially when money needs to get there really quickly.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next topic, and this is going to be my last question because we have 5 minutes left, and I do want to offer to the crowd to ask questions. Plus, we have lunch, and people are going to run. I'm already hungry, so I'm gonna ask one more question on this one, and it's about data, and it's going to be to Ida. So in this conference, big surprise, we've been talking a lot about data and a lot about AI, and we all know that mobile network operators generate a lot of data. In fact, one of our Disha with CRS did some work in the Philippines with Globe Cash over there, and there's a lot of data. So I was just wondering, are there any opportunities that you're seeing regarding data and the role that Safaricom could play in the humanitarian space around data? And it's okay if you're not, but I just kind of want to put you on the spot, and I want to hear if there's any opportunities.
All right. Thank you so much. I think before I go to data, if you can allow me, I think I would also want to mention that you see when you're using M-Pesa, it also allows for global remittances.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and cross-border remittances. So I think it's important to mention that we also have that. We see
We got
even
some competition around here.
no partners, not competitions.
Wonderful, love it.
Yeah. So yeah, because I think every organization has a strong area, and I think it's also seeing like in this market, how do we collaborate more to deliver, and also to mention that even one of the key approaches that we use, even when we are working with our partners, is just to be able to see to use the human-centered design approach, because we really want to develop what works for the partners and also what works for the beneficiaries. We don't want to develop something that will give them and then they will not use. So I think that's also one of the key links that I wanted to mention. Regarding data, I think allow me to call it big data insights, not data, big data insights. So if you're looking in terms of how do you program effectively, if we are working together, we try and see how do we collaborate on the insights perspective from a programming perspective. So it's something that we explore. And as I mentioned, our approach is more in terms of being enablers and co-creating for scale for our organizations that we work with.
Thank you so much, Ida. Okay, now it's questions from the crowd, if there's any. And if not, it's okay, because I can still talk about this for hours. Do we have any questions? Any hands up? Oh, we do. One here. Can we get a support? Oh. Over here in the front. And if you can start with your name and your organization, I appreciate it.
Thank you. This is Ali Mansoor from ICS. My question is mostly about interoperability because of, and both sides, like interoperability if you are connecting with the FSP and also if you are connecting with the organization. For example, organizations like, WFP, they have their own system of scope. World Vision has the LMMS, and there are many other organizations. They do have their own, a lot of, things. Some organizations are using Kobo tool, which we know that it is very easy for, with the APIs to, for interoperability. But similarly, there are banks who have their own platforms. For example, we were in Nepal when I was working there. We worked with one of the banks and asked them that, can you connect with other system? They said, no, we have our own platform. We are not even with the Visa. So we will be doing our own platform, which means that the fees to the prepaid card will go up if we have to do another agreement, or there will be limitations of use of ATM only from that bank. So how your systems are interoperable and with the organizations as well with the banks?
Thank you. Great question. I'm going to hand that question over to Jesse to start off, if you're okay. And yeah, the interoperability and the siloed tendencies of financial service providers, it would be wonderful to hear, especially on the way that QualiPay is linking up with the financial service providers on the ground.
Yeah. So technically, we are a payment services aggregator platform. So we never custody funds. We are just the kind of middleware layer that makes blockchain usable because it's pretty complex without that kind of user-friendly support. And so we have payment payout options in 82 countries, and those we're agnostic, right? So whoever is operating there, whether it's mobile money, bank, cash agents, we can plug into them. And sometimes that looks like an actual service provider. Like for example, in Kenya, Pretium is one of our withdrawal partners, right? Because they can take, and we've used M-Pesa Rails, they can take USDC and then they can do a batch disbursement to thousands of people over M-Pesa in a couple of minutes. In a place like Malawi, for example, Yellow Card is a big name across the continent for converting stablecoins into bank and mobile money. And then in more kind of challenged places like Myanmar, Sudan, that is a payout network that we have essentially had to build ourselves because it's just not as advanced. But essentially, like however people are receiving money in a country, we can plug into, so long as they're willing to work with stablecoins.
Wonderful. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Again, like I said, I could talk about this for hours, but it is lunch. I do want to reflect a couple of things. First, Relevate, my colleague Matthew has a table below on the first floor, so please do reach out to him if you have any questions. I've already seen some people. I was like, I would love for you to go speak with them. Jesse's going to be around all day. Yeah, Jesse, because definitely speak out to QualiPay. She's around. A lot of very interesting information, and we have a very short window with Ida, but she might be leaving soon. But if you do, definitely reach out to her. Thank you for your participation today. Really appreciate your insight. It's been great working with all three of you. I hope I can continue working with you. And thank you for your participation, your presence here in the session today. That's it. Thank you very much.